Stopping Ebola is hard.
That's the director of the CDC, and I think he said it all when he said...
Stopping Ebola is hard.
It's not easy. It's hard.
Stopping Ebola is hard.
Look out, because we're doing some hard work at the CDC.
Stopping Ebola is hard.
And that's so hard, they're not even going to do it. They can't do it. It's hard.
Why? Because
stopping Ebola is hard.
It's exactly right. So was going to the moon.
Ebola is hard.
We went to the moon, but Ebola.
Oh,
stopping Ebola is hard.
And we don't do these things because they're easy. We don't do these things because they're hard. Okay. We just don't do them.
Well, we're golfing. We can't do them. We're busy.
We're golfing. We got other things going on. We have, we have, what was it, $3 billion that we could spend. Now, remember, do you happen to have the ad from the GOP? Or
I do.
From the DNC on the GOP?
Yes.
You'll love this. Whose fault is Ebola? Of course it's the Republicans.
Washington actually can cut spending.
The CDC says its discretionary funding has been cut by $585 million since 2010.
Cut. Less government. Cut.
Cut.
Our budget has been flat since 2003. Responding to an emerging infectious disease threat, this is particularly damaging.
Cut.
That was the left hook.
Cut.
The right cross was the sequestration.
Cut.
The NIH saw its budget slashed by $446 million.
Cut.
There are outbreaks happening today that we're not able to recognize, stop, or prevent as effectively as we should be able to.
Cut.
Wow, this is...
Cut.
Wow.
Cut.
so ridiculous. Now on the screen it says,
unbelievable.
GOP cuts, kill.
That is unbelievable. This is, and we're the fearmongers. This is absolutely outrageous. Just outrageous. Now let me give you the facts. First of all, I don't think you remember what the director of the CDC actually said. What he said was finding the director of the CDC is apparently hard. But here's what he said. It was for the love of Pete.
Stopping Ebola is hard.
Yes, stopping Ebola is hard.
How does that not have its own defined button already?
I don't know.
It's going to right now.
Okay, put that in there right now.
All right.
Right now, put that in there. Okay.
And now it does.
Got it?
I got it.
So let's test it.
Stopping Ebola is hard.
All right. So here's the thing. Over the past 5...
Stopping Ebola is hard.
Good. We've got it now. All right. So here's the thing. They're saying the cuts. Let me give you the facts. Over the past 5 years, the CDC has received just under $3 billion in transfers from the fund. Only 6%, $180 million of that $3 billion went towards building the epidemiology and laboratory capacity. Instead, this administration has focused the CDC on other priorities. So instead of fighting Ebola and other diseases,
stopping Ebola is hard.
It's really hard. So instead of spending the $3 billion allocated for this and other diseases like it, what they did is that only received $180 million from the Infectious Disease Prevention Fund. $180 billion is what this administration decided to spend.
Million.
$180 million out of $3 billion that they had. $180 million went to the Infectious Disease Prevention Fund. And instead, they gave $517.3 million to the Community Transformation Grant Program.
That probably stopped Ebola. Even though
stopping Ebola is hard.
Yes, but if you're only going to spend $180 million on your infectious disease prevention, you want to spend now nearly 3 times that amount on the Community Transformation Grant Program. And here's what the CDC, according to the CDC's own website, here's what that program did. It increases access to healthy foods by supporting local farmers and developing neighborhood grocery stores. And then they also promote, they don't build, they promote improvements in sidewalks and improvements to street lighting and make it safe and easy for people to walk and ride bikes.
And remember when people are critical, when we say things like, well, this food desert thing is stupid and we should be wasting $500 million a year on it.
Yeah.
Well, what happens? At what cost were we spending that to build grocery stores in communities that didn't need them? Or when you were talking about Agenda 21 and bike paths, people would say, oh, how can you possibly be critical of bike paths? Come on, Beck, what are you doing? Well, that money could have gone and should have gone to do something that the CDC should be doing, like stopping Ebola, which, by the way, is hard.
Stopping Ebola is hard.
So instead, when you see this ad from the Democrats blaming the Republicans for Ebola, first of all, every single American should be outraged. Every American should be outraged. How dare you say that George Bush, by using a photograph of him viewing the World Trade Center from an airplane, was using a tragedy just for election purposes? How dare you say that when people are currently dying? America is freaking out about Ebola. We're now talking about a possible 10,000 new cases a week when there are only 8,000 cases currently worldwide. That we're talking about 10,000 new cases a week and what that will do to our country. How dare you ratchet up the fear with something like that commercial? Cut, 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 cut. GOP kills. How dare you?
And that group is the same group that showed Paul Ryan pushing the old lady off the cliff. Remember that?
It is an absolute outrage, and America needs to reject this.
But it's also Hillary Clinton. And if you look at, I believe it's the first page of that article, I mean, she's quoted as saying one of the reasons why the Ebola thing is happening.
In a paid speech last week, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton attempted to link spending restraints enacted by Congress and signed into law by President Obama to the fight against Ebola. Secretary Clinton claimed that the spending reductions mandated under sequestration are beginning to hurt, citing the fight against Ebola.
See?
The CDC is another example of the response to Ebola. They're working heroically, but they don't have the resources they used to have.
It's
Unbelievable.
That's all they've got, though, for the election. This is what they've got.
Well,
they've got the fear-mongering
But it's not
garbage.
only that. We are arguing about garbage right now when we should be talking about stopping the air flights, stopping the people coming in from West Africa. They are playing politics. It doesn't have to end this way. You can stop the plane travel right now from West Africa. You don't have to spread this all over the globe. This president is going to go down as the most reckless and irresponsible, out-of-touch president in the history of the world. This is reckless endangerment. It is becoming criminal. There are things that the President of the United States can do and should do right now. And one of them is stop the partisanship. Anybody on the right that might be doing this needs to stop the partisanship. Both sides. Now, Mr. President, stop it. Please. The American people beg you, stop it. Pay attention to what is really going on. Stop trying to community organize the world and look at this rationally and logically, please. You can clearly make exemptions for those who want to go help the people in West Africa, but you quarantine them on the way back. If they are willing to go into a hot zone with Ebola, they are willing surely to wait 25 days in a quarantine for their trip back. They're certainly willing to do that. So it makes no sense to say you're going to hurt people from going over and help. They're not going to go over to Ebola if they're wimps and won't sit in a quarantine. That doesn't make any sense. So you can clearly make exemptions. We can clearly fly over into that area. And if you want to fly out of that area and enter the United States, I'm sorry, but you have to be quarantined for 25 days. That only makes logic and logical sense. Please stop playing the games. The next thing, they just gave this Asian nurse, the
blood transfusion
from the doctor that was working for Billy Graham's Samaritan Purse. He got the Z-Map. This is the antidote for Ebola. It works, but it takes 6 months to make a dose. It has to be grown with the tobacco plant. We have to talk at some point about who would have seen tobacco being used as a life-saving medicine. It is absolutely incredible to me. But it takes 6 months to grow it. Why hasn't the CDC taken some of this $3 billion and given it to this company and said, let's fast-track this, please? That's something the president can do right now.
$25 million they did, Glenn. $25 million.
$25 million. The other thing the president can clearly do is with $3 billion, you can start to buy respirators for our hospitals. Who is buying the respirators? Are we buying the respirators? Are they being shipped to the hospitals? You can't just have face masks. You need respirators. Our medical personnel need to be protected. Now, if I am a recovering alcoholic, former DJ, if I can figure this out, certainly the most powerful man in the world can figure this out. Certainly he has advisors telling him these things. And if he doesn't, Mr. President, fire your advisors.
I don't know, Glenn.
Stopping Ebola is hard.
Jeez,
did you consider that as part of your analysis?
Maybe you didn't think of that.
I didn't.
No, because
Stopping Ebola is hard.
So you're asking a lot. You're asking a lot.
I just want to point out to the American people
that
stopping Ebola is hard.
And then go a step further. And tell you that your life is about to change. If we don't stop this, your life will change.
You're right. I mean, life is completely upside down if this happens.
Your economy stops.
Yes.
Okay. This is.
Don't count on anything to be in the grocery stores. Don't count on anything in your bank. Your bank will be closed. The gas stations will be closed.
Let's just try this on for size. First of all, let's just say it gets out of control here in Texas. Let's just say, okay, what that'll mean is companies will start saying nothing comes out of Texas, nothing goes into Texas. Just the hint of this has already stopped people. We know people who have companies who have said, we're not traveling to Texas. It's
just for our weekend, for the museum.
Just for our weekend.
Some of the people that were coming.
Yeah, and they were, and some companies that have made it a policy now of we won't do business with anybody in Texas if it has to be in person. Okay, well, that's really unreasonable at this point. But, okay, to each his own. At what point does that become a tipping point? At how many patients have to be here in Texas before that's a tipping point? Now, if this starts to spread in South America and we are healing people here in America, you're going to have our southern border overrun with Ebola patients because they will want to get to the hospitals here in America. Well, you're going to have a nightmare on your hands because everybody will try to get here. And it takes 6 months to make this serum. 6 months.
Then you'll really see how.
Stopping Ebola is hard.
So now you know that it can be transmitted just by somebody touching something. Well, who wants to use cash? Who wants to actually handle cash? Who wants to touch anything anywhere? Who wants to go to the movies? There's a collapse. Who wants to go to sporting events? There's a collapse. Who wants to go to the shopping centers? Your malls? There's a collapse. Who wants to go anywhere? You will stay. Who wants to take your kids to school? You will stay in your home. How do you work? How do you buy stuff? How do you survive? Your life is about to change. Should these predictions, now coming from the head of the CDC, saying that it's 10,000 new cases a week, there are only 8,000 cases currently in the world.
That prediction actually came from the World Health Organization.
Okay. They have more credibility than the CDC.
Well, the head of the CDC, his prediction
was
stopping Ebola is hard.
He did point that out.
Yeah, so he made a more dire statement than the World Health Organization.
Here's the thing. We have got to get people in that are, I saw Mitt Romney yesterday, and Mitt Romney was talking about, hey, I'm thinking about running, especially if Ted Cruz and Rand Paul are going to be.
To be clear, he wasn't saying that, but people around him.
People around him. So it's the same people. Mm-hmm. But they're saying, to stop Rand Paul or Ted Cruz, he'll run.
Yeah,
gosh.
You wouldn't want
you wouldn't want that happening.
Conservatives running for president.
Unbelievable.
You don't want
Absolutely unbelievable. We have got to get new people in.